All right. Hello, everybody. Monique here, and I have a very, very special guest with me today, Dr. Gabby Pelicci, and we're going to have a fierce conversation. So I'm super excited. Let's see. Hold on, Dr. Gabby. I'm just looking at something here,
No worries. Take your time.
and it looks like just checking to make sure that we're
My
live.
screen says recording live to Facebook. That's what
All
my
right, so I think we're live. Okay, so let's just continue and we'll see who pops in live. Otherwise, we're going to have lots of people watching this as a recording. So, Dr. Gabby, how are you doing today?
excellent.
Thank you for being with us. We have lots of incredible women that are part of this community, women leaders, women executives, women entrepreneurs, and mostly just spiritually minded women who are kind of on that journey like you and I, seeking, connecting to spirit, to the world, being more grounded, being on purpose. That's definitely something we're going to talk about today. And almost everyone that I connect with in this group is on a healing journey, which is why I was so drawn to your book. And everyone, this is Dr. Gabby's book. All This Healing is Killing Me, and it's her memoir. So before we go any further, let me just tell you who Dr. Gabby is. So
Yay.
Gabrielle Pelicci, Ph.D., also known as Dr. Gabby, hi Barbara, welcome, is a professor and a coach guiding individuals and groups toward wholeness using writing as a medicine. She completed her doctoral work in transformative studies at the California Institute of Integral Studies with additional degrees in psychology and educational technology from Columbia University. During her 20-plus year career, Dr. Gabby has taught hundreds of students and clients proven strategies for positive change in life and in work. She has been a university professor of integrative and holistic medicine since 2007. She was named one of the top 100 women of the future in 2022 for her work in emerging technologies. Her first book, All This Healing is Killing Me, is a #1 Amazon bestseller. And I have to say, as I told Gabby, I'm on chapter 5, and I literally cannot put it down, except the only time I have to read is at 10 o'clock at night and I fall asleep. So, but it's really riveting and raw and real and so vulnerable. So I'm just totally enjoying your journey and seeing parts of myself in it, seeing parts of my clients in it, and also just seeing a thread of, what we go through as women, right? High achieving women who want to live in our purpose, and how hard that is sometimes to figure out what the right path is without jumping into imposter syndrome, right? And staying in that place for too long. So before we go too deep into the book, Dr. Gabby, I always ask my guests, and we all have many fierce moments and fierce decisions, but if you can share with us a recent or any fierce decision that really calls out to you that you want to chat about today.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. And thanks for the lovely, passionate introduction to the book. The book is the fiercest thing I've ever done. It was terrifying from beginning to end, and it continues to be kind of terrifying even now, which I don't want to discourage writers, and I don't want to discourage anyone from being like raw and truthful, but it requires quite a bit of courage. It requires a lot of resilience. It requires a lot of support, commitment, and working through your own stuff so that the story has value for other people. There's a difference between venting, maybe you're venting in a WhatsApp group or a blog or something. There's a difference between that and taking the raw material of your personal experience and crafting that as a gift to give to others to help them have more awareness or insight or empowerment or transformation. And because all of the teaching and writing and everything that I do is based around transformation, I wanted the book to be a gift. I didn't want it to be a vent, like, and I think everyone can feel that when they pick it up, because it covers a lot of really hard topics. There's a
Yeah.
lot of conversation in there about mental health and trauma and addiction and suicide and violence, like hard topics. But, and you heard this, when we had that call the other day, we had a small group of women and we were having a conversation about the book. People continue to say they feel better after they put the book down, which is hard to even comprehend. Like, I just read this really difficult thing and I feel better having read it. And that's a testament to like doing the work that you need to do to put something into the world that has that positive impact on other people. And that was not easy.
Yeah, I can totally sense that. I mean, reading it, I put myself in your shoes and I'm like, oh my goodness, like the things, first of all, you never know what a person goes through. And that's the biggest aha for me in walking through this world gently, is reminding myself that I have no idea what anyone's story is, what they have gone through, what allows them to keep walking in, on this earth, pushing forward with a smile on their face. Or maybe, one day they're angry, and what prevents me from not taking it personally, right? Our stories are very personal, and having the grace to understand that we each have our stories, and that they are a part of our healing journey if we allow them to be. I know that so many women who are going to be listening to this are at a point in their life where they want to share their stories, where they have something to say that is going to allow them to kind of get that little bit that's left out of them, right? To help them to really take a deep breath. And I'm curious, what did it take for you to finally realize that writing this was going to kind of get you to that next level of healing?
I mean, you've already said it really well. I agree that there's women in the group that probably have the burning desire that I had. I think it was a Maya Angelou quote that she says, like, that the worst thing is to die with your story inside of you. I'm paraphrasing, but I do think there gets to be a point where the story is like here, and you can't quite focus on anything else. You can't quite move forward in the way that you want to without putting it out. And the story had been chasing me for 15 years. Like, I had written a first draft in 2007 and a second in 2013 and another one during the pandemic. And the story itself was relentless and it was pursuing me. And I kept being like, yeah, I'd work on a draft. I'd do some edits. It wasn't where it needed to be. I'd put it away and I'd go back to other things. And the last time when it emerged, there was just no way to do anything else. Like, there was no way to focus on other things. It was too imminent. It was too present, and it needed to come out. And I think people have that experience. And I think if we don't honor that experience, a lot of times we find ourselves falling deeper and deeper into like a malaise or a depression or a frustration or a meaninglessness. And then we try to find other solutions for it. And I do believe when I say writing is medicine, writing, creativity, expressive arts, I do think that is the medicine. I don't think that you're depressed or you're in a crisis. I think your creativity wants to come through, and that's the life force. And that's what will continue to nourish your physical and mental health. And I think there's a disconnect there. I think, we are systematically trained away from our creativity, especially like as we go through the school system. And I don't think it's our first thought, where's my creativity? How am I expressing that, when we're thinking about how we feel about ourselves and about our life? So I think it's worth a reflection. If you're not feeling so great, if you're feeling a bit frustrated, if you're feeling a bit lost, stuck, burnt out, I think it's worth some reflection to think about your creativity and what is your relationship to that, and how much time are you spending on it?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that. I think part of it too for women is we have this idea that we have to work so hard, right? And we have to keep doing what we have to do in order to be quote unquote successful. And that prevents us from playing, from just, setting aside work and jumping into things like writing or, I just created this, in my eyes, a magnificent piece of art that's, on my wall staring at me right now. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is the first time, aside from dancing, because I was a dancer all my life, which is calling me again. And I know that I need to go back because that's one of the ways that I heal. But for the first time in my life, I'm like, I am an artist. I see myself as an artist. And when you do art and creativity with intention, like for me, this piece was all about healing as well. And it just elevates, your spirit and allows you to kind of release whatever weight is kind of holding you back. So yeah, being expressive, allowing ourselves to be expressive, having that be part of our spiritual journey, right? And the daily rituals that we partake in, I think are extremely important for, high achieving women to make that a part of their life. Is writing still a part of your day-to-day life?
Yeah, I'm writing another book.
Oh my goodness.
It's going a little bit slow because I'm working so much. I'm a part-time professor and a full-time employee at a company called Third Wave, which does psychedelic medicine,
Mhm.
education, trainings. Um, and so I'm sneaking in the writing, nights and weekends and things like that. But yeah, hopefully I have another draft by the end of the year.
Awesome.
So.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the writing process. I know for me, when I think of my latest fierce moment, which was extremely painful, sad, um, and yet parts of me want to express it, want to share it publicly or be able to, quote about it, write about it, speak about it. Um, I think about everyone else, right? I think about the other people, the family members. How did you handle that in writing such a profound memoir? And what steps did you take to both give yourself permission to be honest, regardless of what anybody thought, but also, did you have conversations with people ahead of time and just kind of let them know what you were doing? How did that work?
Yeah, it was a process. It wasn't easy for me. I had asked that same question that you're asking me to many, many authors. I'd gone to all kinds of
Mm,
author events and I had asked that question repeatedly myself because I felt like it was going to be uncomfortable for me. Um, and I think part of the reason the book didn't get published until it did is because both my parents are passed now, and a lot of the book is
mhm.
about my parents. And I think so on some level, I even had to wait until, my parents weren't here.
Yeah.
The way that I approached it is I wrote the first drafts as if I were writing in a diary and no one was ever going to see it, just so that I could get out the truth. You used some adjectives to describe the writing, like raw and vulnerable. So I needed to just write it first, just to tell myself my story, and I needed that to be really private. And so the many of the early drafts, no one saw them. And then little by little, I would find one person in my life that I trusted implicitly to like
Mhm.
hold an unconditional loving space for me that I really trusted, wouldn't say anything judgmental or critical or shaming or anything to me, and would share, and that person would validate me, and I would need to process that. I would need to process that revealing and receiving, and I would need to build up a little bit more courage, and then add a few more female friends. Mostly they were all female friends,
Mhm.
which is what I think is really one of the biggest values of like a community like this. And so little by little, a few more female friends, a few more female friends, until I had a collective of women saying, your story is very important. You can go public with this story. You will not die. The world will not implode. Everything's going to be fine. You need to tell your story. And so once I had that sort of collective strength, I was
Mm-hmm.
then able to share the story with some people that are in the story. Like I have some siblings and things that are in the story. My siblings, they didn't even read the manuscript. They just said, "We trust you. We
Oh,
trust you. We trust you."
amazing.
I think since then they've read some of it, but also there's just this feeling of, I don't know, trust. And I'm not
Mhm.
sure, I'm not sure how I earned that from them, but I've talked about many people in the book, and some people that are in the book have read the book, and all they've expressed is love, validation, gratitude. I'm so proud of you. So my outcome is the best possible outcome. That might
Yeah.
not be everyone's outcome, but my outcome was the best. And I believe a lot of it is because I was so careful in the process, and I made sure to make the story about me, never to like narrate their story or put words in their mouth or even imply their motivations or
Right.
intentions towards me. I made it very centric on just how I felt about what was happening, which I think was important. And the last thing that I'll say is that once the validation started to flow in, I had to go through another period of time of sort of this heart opening, bittersweet. I can even feel it now as I'm talking about it, like emotion of like relief mixed with, I don't know that I can hold this much love from all of these people. Like, because I think we're all walking a path of of self-esteem and self-worth, and some of us are farther along than others.
Yeah.
And this is a call for me to up level my self-esteem and sense of worth based on the tremendous positive feedback that I'm receiving. And there's work in that. There's work in holding, owning, honoring that I really do have a lot of value. I'm creating value for the people around me.
Yeah.
And I'm being received with so much love. So long journey,
Mm-hmm.
lots of considerations. I did it in baby steps. I moved very slowly because that's what I needed to do.
Yeah. Ah, I love that. And I want to talk for a second about the title because it's just riveting to me. And but it's so important. I can say with my super close women friends who are like sisters, um, and who are my sounding board, and we've gone through a lot of healing together, and we often have these moments where we call each other and we're like, why
Yeah,
am I here again? Why do I
yeah,
feel like I have to heal this again? I thought I cleared it.
yeah.
It's like, why? So I'm still not at the end of the book, or so there's a lot of the healing journey, your healing journey, that I still don't know. um but how did you come up with this title, and at what point were you at this kind of breaking point of, oh my gosh, all I'm doing is healing and healing and healing, when on earth is it going to end? And what was the aha for you around that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I hear similar feedback. You're not the only one calling your friends and having that conversation. Many other women are also calling their friends and having that conversation regularly. The title itself came into my head. I was in like the last chapter of the last draft after like this whole thing, and I was just on my knees, like begging Jesus and Buddha and Kali and like anyone else out there, like, just get this book out of my life. What is happening? Like, I just needed it to be. And I kept saying to my editor, because I was working with an editor, I kept saying, I need this to be over. I just need this to be over. And I was just like almost at the finish line. And I just had this thought, like, all this healing is killing me, because the book is part of my healing journey as much as
Yes.
the content that I write about. And I was like, this is hilarious. And I sent it to her. Her name's Bridget. And I'm like, all this healing is killing me. That's the new title of the book. And she's like, that title is amazing. And that's the title of your book. And I was like, really? And she was like, yes, 100%. And I was like, okay. So it was literally just like a text message exchange with my editor. She was like, yes, because she also, most of her clients are women, and a lot of the stories are not similar to mine, but like fierce moments, like, you know, you're talking about. And I think the other thing that's fun about it is that I'm someone that really values humor. I'm a really silly, goofy person. And it's kind of funny. There's like something tongue in cheek about it. Like, all this healing is killing me. You know,
Yeah.
there's something just kind of also lighthearted about it.
Yeah. It kind of reminded me of, I feel like we're all addicts in some way, right? We all have addictions.
For
And
sure.
one of my addictions is my strength, which is learning. Like I was in higher education for 20, I'm still in higher education. I haven't stopped. So I'm still training in higher education, teaching. And all I want to do is learn. All I want to do is read. All I want to do is take courses and get certified. But, we say in the world of strengths that, you know, when you overutilize your strengths, it becomes a weakness. And I think the
Oh,
same
yeah.
holds true for healing, and we do have to get to a point where we're like, can we just sit in this present moment and look at ourselves in the mirror and say, I am perfectly 100% whole and healed and perfect, like right now as who I am. And I don't need to do another goddamn thing
Which
for
goes
another
back to
six
your
months.
earlier comment that you said, which is like, as high achieving people,
Yeah.
you know, everything always has to be utility and
Yeah.
productivity. And like you mentioned that earlier. And healing can be another thing on the to-do list. You know, I'm going to my therapist, my acupuncturist,
Right.
my chiropractor, my something ceremony, my breath work, my yoga. Like, it can become
Yes.
another weird
Yeah.
activity thing that we're doing all the time,
Yeah.
which is very strange.
Yeah, it is. We just have to put it into check like everything else, right?
Yeah.
And not also make all healing modalities like the savior, right? I think a big part of it is where do I take ownership? And where do I get to a point where I know enough? I've learned enough, and now I just need to do the work and know that it's gonna, support me in some way, shape, or form. Um, Okay, so let's move on. There's so many things I want to talk about, and I don't know that we'll get to all of it, but I want to talk about purpose next. That was a big theme in your book. And let me see if I have a couple of quotes here. Let's see. Did I write one down? I did not. Okay, I wrote down others that we'll get to in a minute, but I know that was a big part of the journey for you, not feeling like you were connected to who you were, what your gifts were, what you were here to do in the world. And that is such a common theme still today. Like, it doesn't matter how old we are, doesn't matter how successful we are, how many degrees we are. I find that because we're here to self-actualize, that becomes just a big question, that we're chasing in life. And again, not having gotten to the end of your book, what was that journey like for you? And did you, or have you finally gotten to a place where you're like, yeah, I kind of know what my purpose is? And, how did you find that?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I was obsessed pretty early on with purpose. It was something that just felt like core to navigate through life. It felt like, if I don't know my purpose, how am I going to make any decisions about anything? Like, how do I know where to live, or like what to study, or, it felt really important. And without giving too many spoilers, the book starts with my mom passing away, which is the call to the heroine's journey, right? It's the thing that
Yes.
sets me off on the journey. And through that process of coming to terms with her experience, my purpose starts to emerge. And I agree with you that it's like a lifelong, ongoing exploration and transformation of purpose as we achieve certain things. For a long time, my North Star was writing this book. It was like, I have to take my story and I have to create some kind of alchemy from it that I can share with others. I think this is an important gift to share with others. And there was a moment even after putting the book out where I was like, oh, well, what am I supposed to do now?
Yeah.
I feel like so much of my life force energy, and it wasn't that I was always working on the book, but it was like the themes in the book, which you'll read about trauma recovery, about not just surviving, but thriving, about confronting my own addictions around relationships and attachments, taking real accountability for that, finding a way to live a really healthy life, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. That was always core for me. It was really central for me. And that evolution continues to happen for me. I think
Yeah.
the value in these practices that you mentioned is that when we do these immersions and these retreats and these medicines and things, we can find alignment with purpose.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a family member that's sick, and maybe the only thing you're supposed to do for the next 12 months is take care of that family member,
Yes.
or maybe you had an idea for a business and it's so strong it can't be ignored, and the only thing you're supposed to do for the next 2 years is try to start this business. And
Mm-hmm.
I think creating permission for all of those things
Yeah.
and letting all of them be part of your mission is
Mm. That's so
a
beautiful.
good way to move forward.
Yeah, definitely. For me, that feels like everyone in this community knows that I talk about flow. For me, flow is understanding that there's divine timing at play, that there are impulses and things that we're called to, that if we're not listening, we could miss the window, of opportunity to really do something that ignites us with purpose and pleasure. And just being so tuned in to the world and hearing the signs and seeing the symbols, that we kind of know how to flow and receive, right? And speaking of that, one of the things that I'm loving most about your book is this connection with your mother, and
Yeah.
how almost that connection is deeper and even more meaningful than it was when she was alive, right?
Mhm.
And again, without giving too much away, um, it's through her passing that you start to uncover these supernatural spiritual gifts in yourself. And so one question that I have for you is, what does that relationship and what do those gifts look like today, now that you've had like
Yeah.
all this time? And then the second thing, because you work with others and help others transform, I've noticed in, so many people that I'm connected with, when they go through severe trauma or near-death experiences or painful, fearful issues, that it's in those moments when something opens up and they start to receive messages or start to experience the supernatural or gifts that they all of a sudden have. um, are you seeing that in others as well? So
Mm.
it's kind of a two-part question, but I love all of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, you're absolutely right. My relationship with my mom became much stronger after she passed, and it did open up a lot of spiritual abilities for me that initially were terrifying. I was 21 years old. I didn't know what the hell was going on. Like, it just didn't fit into my worldview. It made no sense. The difference now is however many years later, what is it, like 27 something years later? I've read all the books from all the traditions all over the world, and it's very, very common in all indigenous cultures and
Mm,
Eastern cultures that you're connected with your ancestors, that your grandpa passes away, and then you can communicate with him throughout your life. He's your protector, he's your guide. It's very common. Only in our culture has it become like taboo or
mhm.
something, because what I'm finding is that everybody's having the experience, but they're either too embarrassed to talk about it, or they think that they're crazy and they try to medicate it or something. It's very natural
Right.
to feel a sentience in nature, to feel a sentience in a tree, a flower, a cat, a dog, a person who has passed. All of that is very normal. and we need to normalize it again. I don't even
Yeah.
know why we're not normalizing it, because it's normal for all of time,
Yes.
and maybe it's not happening to you, so you think other people are weird, but it doesn't mean it can't happen to you. One of the interesting things about the psychedelics renaissance is that I wouldn't be surprised if you took a bunch of mushrooms that it started happening to you, because that's what they do. They help
Right.
you to open up that channel of communication. So if it's not happening to you, take some mushrooms and it will happen to you.
Yes.
So that's like with regards to like, the spiritual things. Trauma, I do believe, like you said, is an opportunity to tap into those gifts. I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe because it's so disruptive,
Yeah.
like I think maybe we get smaller signs and symbols and things like you
Hmm.
described, and maybe they're easier to ignore. Maybe we have an ego agenda that's like, that's not important, this is important. I'm not sure. But something about trauma, maybe it's just so disruptive
Mm.
that you really do have to stop. You have to go within. You have to regroup. You have to feel your feelings. And maybe it's in that opportunity that you get access to these other insights, intuitions, gifts,
Yes.
things of that nature. That's, one kind of theory of it. I
Yeah.
don't know. It also feels to me that there's been this sort of pipeline. You mentioned earlier about this sort of repetition of patterns and things that need to be addressed. I do feel in my own life that there's been a pipeline of lessons that, it comes through and I get it, but I didn't quite get it all the way. And it comes again. And then I get a little bit more and a little bit more, because I do feel like there is some sense of assignments in this life of things that are really important for me to master. And
Yes.
I do feel a sense of, not that they're not my choice, but that it's just some sort of karmic lesson that is just what's coming and what's assigned in this life for
Absolutely.
whatever reason. I
Yeah.
don't know why,
I do believe in that. I do believe. I think many of us in uh modern day society, we do have similar limiting beliefs because of the way we were raised, culturally, and what was allowed and what wasn't. But then, as an astrologer, I really believe that we each are born with a karmic thread that, of
Yeah.
course, repeats itself, and part of it could be uncovered, through our natal chart, through understanding, the wisdom behind all this ancient knowledge, and then part of it is still hidden, right? And we have to figure it out, and it's through that
Mhm.
connection to ourselves and to the supernatural that we get dripped, right? We get these drips throughout our life, and that's probably why the healing never ends. We're not supposed to do it
Yeah.
all at once, and it's
Yeah.
part of the journey. So I want to talk a little bit about let's see, psychedelics, because I know this is something you're extremely passionate about. I have not had any experiences with psychedelics. And I've interviewed other incredible women who are on that journey too. And, I always say in these interviews, like, totally interested, in trying it out the right way. Haven't had the opportunity just yet, but it's also something that seems extremely popular right now, right?
You
So
think? It is.
it is, right? So it's one of the,
Mhm.
just like
Yeah.
astrology and tarot and all
Yeah.
these things, there's a time and place for it all. And it's for me, part of this Aquarian age that we're all waking up to. Wow, there's so many things that can help us,
Right.
on this healing journey. And we can do it in safe ways. We could do it. I know integration is a big deal. So being that you have a lot of experience in this, what can you tell us about psychedelics? For those of us who don't know much, for those of us who are interested in figuring out the right way to get started. And I'm curious too, because I've heard some horror stories of people who did not integrate their experiences. And I know that is, a key. What does integration look like?
Yeah, great question. So I was you 3 years ago. I was sitting in your chair and
Yeah.
I was asking everybody else, like, what's the deal with psychedelics? Like, I was you. And psychedelics came into my life very serendipitously. It wasn't something I sought out. I had been around people my whole life, like I'm sure you have, who did drugs at
Yes.
parties or clubs or
Concerts.
whatever. And I never, yeah, I didn't partake. I didn't want to
Yeah.
partake. I valued my mental health
Yeah.
more. And I felt like I was too fragile for experiences like that because already my brain was a little wobbly and I just didn't want to introduce those things. And that was actually a really good intuition. If you have mental illness, if you're bipolar or you're borderline or you're on meds or anxiety or depression, don't do any of this stuff. Don't do it. If you want to start down the path and you want to look at, coming off meds and trying these, you have to work with a doctor. You have to work
Hmm.
with a therapist. This is not something, don't play with this.
Right.
It's not a toy. Don't play with it. So just that disclaimer, like, just don't. Um, that being said, I was doing volunteer work. I was doing humanitarian work during the pandemic. I was building houses. I was working on farms. I was planting trees. I was harvesting food. I was making community agriculture boxes. I was learning permaculture and herbalism and doing these
Mm.
certifications. And I was, again, serendipitously living with a woman in New Mexico who was preparing peyote for ceremonies. She worked closely. There's a very significant indigenous native community in Taos, New Mexico that have been there for thousands of years in the same place. In indigenous communities, you can use peyote for religious purposes, spiritual ceremonies. She was helping to prepare and to facilitate some of these things. And I was microdosing on peyote. Peyote is a cactus. It looks like a
Mhm.
little button. We called them buttons. And we would suck on them while we were working. And there was just like such an innocence in it for me. It wasn't like I'm at a party and I'm doing drugs. It was
Right.
literally like sucking on a piece of ginger or
Hmm.
a piece of lavender. Like there was just such an innocence in it, and I had such a reverence, and I was doing what's considered a microdose, like such a small amount, but I could feel subtle effects in the same way that you feel subtle effects if you have a shot of wheatgrass or
Right.
a turmeric latte.
Yes.
You can feel a little bit of, ooh,
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
I feel a little, right? So I could
I don't
feel
know.
like a little.
Does baklava count? I'm
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I'm like, every
Like it
time I
gives
eat
you a
that, I'm
little
like,
juice. You
oh
get like a
my
little,
God.
yeah. So I was getting like a little juice from the peyote and I was like, oh my God, like this feels really nice. And that was the first time I started to have that mindset shift. Like maybe this is a medicine for me. Maybe I don't have
Mm.
to be as scared as I've been and so adverse and so
Yeah,
uncomfortable. Maybe this could be a
sure.
medicine for me. And then I continued down the path of doing my herbalism and permaculture certifications. I started working with psilocybin in Guatemala. And again, small doses, what's called non intoxicating doses. So you don't feel high,
Right.
you don't feel out of control, you're not hallucinating, you're not tripping. It's a non intoxicating dose, but you can feel a little juice. There's like a little
Yes.
juice that wasn't there before. And I did that for 18 months on psilocybin and felt a restoration in my system, felt more clear thinking, less
Hmm.
attraction to caffeine and alcohol, more
Hmm.
like just kind of a stability, not as high, not as low, like more of a
Right.
stability. And you mentioned some of the side effects and that people can have bad trips and people can have adverse reactions. And it's comparable to any medicine that you take. If you
Hmm.
were taking Prozac, if you were taking Xanax, if you're taking Oxycontin, you putting anything in your body, there's a chance of adverse effects. There's a chance of bad outcomes. And it's the same with
Yeah.
these, which is why I said it's not something that you're just,
Right.
popping pills just, willy nilly.
Hmm.
So I did that. And then I felt ready towards the end of that journey to try a few other medicines. So I did 2 ayahuasca ceremonies, which were some of the most difficult experiences of my life. That they're not messing around. Ayahuasca is not for the faint of heart. It's a very, very strong medicine. And you need to have purification in your body. You can't go in there all messed up. You can't go in there with alcohol and drugs and other things in your system. You have to be very careful and you have to work with the right people. And it was very challenging and very purifying for me. I came out of there and I definitely felt that I had dropped a lot of psychic garbage that had been kind of just sort of
Yeah.
like, in the closets of my mind for a while. It did feel much clearer, much lighter, a lot of relief, pain relief when I came out of that. And then the last and most recent thing I did was a ketamine protocol. So ketamine is legal in the US. You can get it at clinics. I think there's hundreds of clinics now in the US where you can go and you can do infusions or lozengers. I did the lozengers. And
What is ketamine for those who don't know?
yeah, ketamine it's a synthetic medicine. Like all the other medicines I've mentioned so far grow in nature, right? Like
Right.
they're cactuses, like ayahuasca is a vine, psilocybin is a mushroom. They just grow in the world
Right.
and you just harvest them. Uh, so ketamine is a synthetic medicine. It's a medicine that when you take a certain dosage of it, you do have a dissociative experience. It's not like an LSD type experience. It's like a disassociation. And they say that the value of that is that you can kind of get a little bit of an emotional break from whatever trauma or experience you had, and you can kind of get like a fresh perspective on that. And there's a few synthetics like MDMA and ketamine and LSD. There's a few of these synthetics that they're using that they've been using before. We have evidence in the 1950s and 60s of, 1,000 or more studies of using these medicines for people who have addiction and mental health challenges and seeing positive outcomes for them. Because it's not a medicine you have to take long term. It's a medicine that you take half a dozen times and you process what needs to be processed, and then you're done. It's not like you have to then stay on the medicine for 10 years afterwards. So
it almost sounds like it allows you to get outside of yourself and see like perspective.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what the disassociatives do. MDMA is a heart opener. So what MDMA does is, like, say you have a partner, spouse, or anybody that you're having challenges with, and every time you try to talk to them, it's like this, it's just this like stuckness. MDMA is great for couples because it softens your heart and it allows you to say things that you might not normally be able to say and be received with love because your heart is just so open and you're not perceiving the person as attacking you or, so MDMA is great for trauma, but it's also really great for relational type therapeutic work. LSD is really popular for creativity. At Third Wave, the company that I work for, we talk about a protocol for microdosing LSD to help you with your creativity and productivity. So this is coming back. We have to be very careful about mainstream use of this because we have to be able to, you and I are advocates for people waking up, right?
Yes.
But what happens if like 8 billion people wake up?
Right.
Like,
And
my
experience of a lot of these things, I didn't do any of them. I didn't like my experience of people on these drugs, like in college or afterwards. It was quite scary, that's how I would experience them. And you're right. If you have everyone in society just doing this willy-nilly, I can see how that could be, not a good thing for humanity. But there's a value, right? There is a value in, again, microdosing, working with someone who is a doctor who's experienced in this, and then this idea of, or again, I'm using words that I know are popular, but obviously there's meaning behind them. This idea of integration. Does that mean that you're working with someone afterward for a period of time to make sure that you're processing this properly and taking care of yourself properly?
Well, you're a coach, right? So let's say there's some woman in your fierce community and she's like, I'm starting a business. I quit my job.
Yes, this just happened actually. I have a client.
And you're like, okay, terrifying, amazing. What do we do now? That's integration.
Yes,
that's integration.
Okay.
The what do we do now?
Yes.
That's integration.
Okay.
It's the what do we do now? It's like, okay, are your finances in order? Okay. Like, do you have a business plan for your business? Okay.
Right.
Like, did you join a community of people that can support you? Like,
Yeah.
That's what integration is. Like
Okay.
the big moment, the aha, the catalyst for change is, often a medicine experience or ceremony. And then you got to deal with all the things,
Yes. That come
all
up.
the things, and integration can last for years. For me, I feel like I've been in about a 3-year integration
Mhm.
process of
Mhm.
making small, significant changes and figuring out how to live life in a different way. Because pre quitting your job, your life probably looked a certain way. Maybe your commute was the same every day and you went to an office and somebody else told you what
Right.
to do. And then you checked out at the end of the day and you went home and you had a 401k. And now maybe you have this moment and you quit all that and you're starting this business. And now what does your life look like? Like, what does it
Yeah.
look like? Like, what is your schedule? Like, who are you accountable to? And
Yeah.
how do you organize your time?
Yeah.
And how do you make money? And how do you spend the money and save the money? Like, all of a sudden, there's a whole lot of stuff to figure out.
Absolutely. I mean, you're describing my life into 2026 when
Yeah.
I left 2016, when I left a
Yeah.
20-year career, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you think about these things, but when you're in it, it's like, whoa, I am accountable to myself. Like,
Yes.
this is big. I do have a question here that I want to ask you from Paula. Paula's
Yeah.
asking, is there a pre-ceremony / treatment assessment to see who is a good fit for psychedelics and which particular form of them suits them best? Great
100%.
question, Paula.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. That's something we specialize in at my company. We have something called a personalized psychedelic coaching package. It lasts for 8 or 9 weeks. And you do an assessment, and your provider tells you what you should do and how to source the medicine. And then you do a ceremony or you do the medicine, and then they work with you for 2 months to do that integration. So that's something that we offer. And then I'm in charge of our directory, which is a free resource, which has over 250 providers that you can scroll through and you can pick different providers. And each of them have their own process of preparation, ceremony, and integration.
Okay.
And everybody does it differently. Some are very medicalized, where there'll be like a lot of medical intake information and medical history and holding that container in a very Western healthcare kind of way. And then the sort of other extreme is a lot of nature-based retreats that are happening maybe in Costa Rica or Peru or Mexico or different places where they take much more of a shamanic approach.
Right.
And it's more about a dieta and building a relationship with the plant and
Mhm.
purifying the body and talking to the spirits and stuff. So there really is a broad range. But the reason I work at the company that I work for is because we can help guide people in those directions. And then we have this free resource, this directory where you can find, different clinics and retreats and therapists and coaches that can support you.
I love it. So tell me, I'm going to
Yeah.
write this here in the community. It's third.
Yeah. TheThirdWave.co is the website.
The wave.
TheThirdWave.co is the
Okay.
website. Yeah, and there's free resource guides for all the medicines. There's a free directory with all of the clinicians. There's a podcast, there's blog posts. That's why I'm
Amazing.
such a huge fan of our community, is because we really advocate for safe and ethical use of these medicines and provide as much content as we can to help people do that.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to keep talking about it because
We have to
it's
keep
just
talking
so
about it.
different. The conversation is so different than what it was, right?
Yeah.
As a, party, as a party tool for so many
Yeah.
people. And so thank you for that. And also Gabby and I are members of Evolve,
Mhm.
which is also a great resource because they're focusing on psychedelics as well and the safe use of psychedelics. So evolve.com is another location where you can get resources and events and things
Mhm.
like that. So awesome. I'm loving all the questions. Thank you, ladies, for being here live. I always love having live members join us.
Where's
Okay.
everybody located? Are the members in your community located mostly in South Florida,
Most
or
in
are
South
they?
Florida, but not everyone. So Jess, where are you? Jess is here live with us. I think you're in, God, you're in the middle country, girl, right? Where are you? Maybe North Carolina. I don't know. Okay. Eastern Iowa. Yeah. So
Wow.
most are South Florida based because, you know, my community, I've been in South Florida all my life. So most of my peeps are here, but the community is growing. And
Well,
so
please extend an invitation for them to come and meet us in person next month at Books and
yes,
Books in Coral Gables. I'm having a party and you get free champagne. So you have to come
yes,
just for
I'm gonna
that.
be there and I'm gonna bring this so
Yeah.
you can sign it.
So please join us on May 22nd. It's a Monday night at Books and Books, and you get to hang out with us face to face. And that would be a really cool way to sort of meet some of your comadres in person.
Yes, and you're gonna be doing a little book reading as well, right? You're gonna share.
Yeah. And
Uh,
one of my teachers and mentors, Nick Garnett, is going to be interviewing me at the event. He's also published a memoir that's really fun called In the Pink. And so we'll do a little Q&A. It'll be nice.
I love it. So, okay, final question from,
Yes.
and this is just a fun one. So, as an author, a published author, what books are you reading right now that are not yours?
Oh, that's a really good question. So it never ends. My queue of books never ends.
I can only imagine.
I'm opening up my phone because like I have Audible and Kindle simultaneously and paperback books on my desk.
Yes,
So I have
yes.
all the things happening constantly. I just finished a book that was really beautiful. I'm trying to find the title of it. Um let's see. It was by this African shaman. So I read
Mm,
mostly nonfiction and memoir.
okay.
And because my next book is about the environment and about all the medicines and stuff like that, I've been doing a deep dive into more of the shamanic stuff. And
Yep.
his name is Malidoma Some, and he's passed, but he's written a bunch of really beautiful books around shamanism. And then
Mm,
to sort of contrast that, because my mind just needs all of the kind of stimulation, I'm also reading a book by Douglas Rushkoff called Survival of the Richest, which is
mm.
um, a book about these like fantasies of tech billionaires about, you know, when all the things go wrong on the planet, like where they're going to go and what they're so my range of reading is very diverse, you know, from the most obscure
Yeah.
sort of Amazon journeys to the most emerging tech
Yeah.
conversations, because I really like the diversity of thought,
Yeah.
and to kind of keep a little bit of awareness on all of the different things that are happening.
My gosh, that's so tough these days, right? Isn't it? There's
It
so much
is.
going, so much to learn
It
and to keep
is.
our finger on the pulse. And that's why I'm
Yes.
glad I have a 24-year-old son and a
Yes.
18-year-old daughter, because they teach me like, Mom, you got to pay attention to this. Like, don't get
Yeah.
lost. You know?
It's so good.
Yeah, it is. And oh, I had one final question I wanted to ask you. So how are you staying creative other than writing? Is there anything fun and creative that you're doing that you're allowing yourself to play with these days?
I'm big into dropping into random events. I really get the most juice from live stuff. So like last week there was a silent disco event that I
Oh,
went to, and there was like
those are
100 of
so much
us with
fun.
the headphones like you know, like
I
I
love
just
it.
love to find.
Yes.
Or I also went to the farmers market for Earth Day, and I bought like this beautiful like
Oh,
tiger stone for
yes.
protection. Like I love just
Exploring, it sounds like. Yeah.
meeting local artists and farmers, and going to community sponsored events for storytelling or live music, you know, really that's where I get the most
Yeah.
inspiration.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. Gabby, thank you. Thank you. We've gone an
This was so
hour.
fun.
I started these fierce conversations saying they were going to be 30 minutes. Well, forget it. I'm like, no, we're going an hour with everybody because it's impossible.
Nice.
There's so much yummy stuff to share.
Nice.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being an incredible example of, you know, the women we have in this community who have so much potential, have already achieved great success, and they want to know what's next for them. And
Yeah.
they're healing and they're connecting and just, evolving beautifully. And I'm just grateful to you. And I can't wait to see you in person. I'll
I
put
know.
the link in here so that everybody
Thank
can
you.
register and join.
Come hang out. We'll have a party.
Sounds great. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank
Talk to you
you. Bye,
soon.
ladies.
Bye, everybody.